Hey guys, I'm in my greenhouse today and I'm going to be using a couple of different succession planting techniques, both true succession planting and relay planting, to transition this bed from a bed of lettuce and salad greens into a bed of bush beans. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that today and why, and hopefully by using this technique I'll be able to have an extra early crop of bush beans this year. First of all, I want to give you a look of what I've got growing in here. Over here on this corner is arugula. I planted that probably in February, I would say, and it's starting to bolt, which means I'm trying to harvest these leaves as much as I can, because the more that this arugula starts to bolt, the more spicy they end up being. And I also have another crop of arugula in my green stalk planters, so I know that I really don't need this anymore. So this will be a good true succession planting area that I can have bush beans go in here. This is my spinach, which I've been picking on and off for a couple of months as baby spinach. It actually hasn't shown any signs of bolting yet, which I'm kind of surprised, because usually spinach bolts before my arugula does. But I'm going to leave a lot of this in here to continue harvesting, but I'm going to take some out so that I can plant some of these bean seeds here. And then over here I have mustard greens. I have a combination of green and red mustard greens. I've been harvesting off of these for probably 4 to 6 weeks, and when mustard greens are really young, they're very tender, but I've noticed when I've been using them in my salads that they're starting to get quite a bit more tough and chewy, so they haven't actually been all that palatable. So I'm going to go ahead and just take these out, especially since I have other lettuce and greens in my green stalk that I can eat from. So I'm going to take these out as well. Back in this corner I have young plantings of lettuce. I'll leave those here because those will be able to continue to be harvested and come up a little bit stronger. And then this I've absolutely loved these. This is called an Elegance Greens mix that I got from Johnny's this year, and I've been harvesting off of this for a solid month. You can tell it's kind of picked over, but every time I come here I'm able to get more. It has been a delight. So I'm not going to harvest all of that out because it isn't bolting yet for the most part. So I'm going to use a technique called relay planting in this area to get some bean seeds in here, but not completely take out this section yet. And then over here I have another planting of lettuce, which this lettuce is pretty adolescent. It's not showing any signs of bolting. I've been taking baby lettuce from that for my salads. So I'll leave that there, but I'll also be able to add some bean seeds around in amidst this section as well. So before I get started showing you how exactly I'm going to be planting these bean seeds in this area, taking out some of these plants but leaving some, I wanted to explain to you why I'm actually doing this. At the time of this recording, we have just passed our average last frost date, which means on the calendar I should be able to direct sow these beans into my garden. But we've actually had a little bit cooler than normal spring, and the soil temperatures are not up to where bean seeds like to germinate out in my garden. So I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer to plant any kind of bean seeds if I want to get good germination. What I'm doing instead then is I'm going to utilize this planter with a bush bean planting. And these particular beans, these are Provider. They are 55 days to maturity, and that usually will start when it sprouts. I'm hoping that they'll sprout really quickly because this greenhouse, I'm already getting hot. It has a tendency to get really, really hot. So I'm hoping that will help the soil temperature warm up quite a bit, even though we're still getting cool at night. And then hopefully I can get these harvested before the heat really starts setting in our climate and in the greenhouse, and I can get a good early jump on this. So that's why I'm choosing to do this in the greenhouse. It's all about the soil temperature, and then in a couple of weeks the soil outside in the garden will be ready for my other main planting of beans, but this hopefully will just give me a little bit of a jump. So let's take a look at actually how I'm doing this to transition this bed into the beans, leaving some of this greens in place. First thing I'm going to do is just get rid of this arugula. I'm going to just cut it off at the soil line. I'll get the roots a little bit later if they don't come out easily. Next, I'm going to rough up the soil a little bit just to get it ready for the beans that'll come in next. Take out my plant tag. And I had put these lines in so that I could delineate between the different plantings. May or may not need that later, but I'm just going to leave them there for now. Okay, for the spinach, I'm not going to leave all of the spinach, but I want to at least be able to plant some bean seeds. Bean seeds, bush beans, normally 4 to 6 inches apart or so. So if I did a row, like 2 rows here, then what I may want to do is just take out the spinach in what would be that row. Now this is actually called relay planting, and not necessarily the taking out of the spinach, but relay planting is when you plant a crop that is going to be in the midst of a crop that's going to be taken out of the garden soon. So the purpose will be for the beans to actually grow up. The spinach will stay here and they will continue to grow until they start to bolt, which I imagine will not be very far from now. And once that happens, I can just take them out. But for the meantime, both the spinach and the beans can grow for a short amount of time together. That way I could still harvest this baby spinach, but I can also not have to wait so long to get the bush beans in. And that just doubles the amount of food you can get in the same amount of space. Because like I said, I still have got some harvest left out of this, and I really don't want to give up that space quite yet. And so I'm just making these rows here so that I can plant that next planting of the beans. All right, so I think we got good rows there, and then doing that kind of roughed up that part of the soil. And I could probably still use this. So I'm gonna save this, and I will probably just take these baby leaves and save it for a salad later. The next thing I'm gonna take out is these mustard greens. Again, they were really nice when they were young, but it's just gotten to where I'm not loving them anymore. And you can pull them out by the root, or you can cut them at soil level. Really either one. Looks like soil levels. Looks like cutting these by the root is actually quicker, so I'll do that. I like cutting at soil level when I don't want to waste all that good soil. So I've pretty much got that area. Okay, let's come back over here. We've got quite a few lettuce that are actually in good places here. But it looks like we could probably get a space right in the middle here for another row. Just have to take out that one lettuce plant. And I think we've got enough for maybe a couple of rows here. One here, one here. And then we may still do maybe a row. These elegance greens I just don't want to mess too much with because they're still going so well. But if I can get that one row in. And looks like there is an area right here I could squeeze some in. I'm going to take this out, this out. I may even take this one out. Looks like I've done a lot of picking off of that one. And that one, which that makes sense because I actually planted these earlier, so they're probably a little bit older and are going to get ready to bolt anyway. So let's just do that. We'll do a row on the edge of beans, and we'll leave that middle row of the elegance greens mix. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got a row down here for the beans. So it may not be completely symmetrical, but honestly, these greens are not going to last that much longer anyway, because we're probably about a month away from all the greens starting to bolt. And finally, I've got the lettuce back here, which I really need to thin anyway, because it's had so much germinate. They're kind of competing against each other. So let's do a little row here. Separate that out. Take that off. I'm going to thin out some plants here to make another row. These lettuce seedlings are not loving this heat anyway. I can already tell they're not doing great when it gets really hot in the greenhouse. So I'm not sure how much longer they'll last anyway. I do only leave a couple of them, but we still have a good row there. Okay, so for each of these 2 sections, we're going to have enough for 2 rows of bush beans. So I'm looking at 4 rows of bush beans for this entire section. So let's go ahead and get planting. I'm going to plant these about 2 inches apart, and if they all germinate, then I can take out every other one. It's called thinning, which is really hard to do, but I'll tell you, I would rather thin than have spots where they're not all germinating. So I'd rather overseed, especially if I have the seed to spare, which I do. When it comes to the depth of the bean seed, usually you want to plant about 1 inch or 2, which is about right because these are about 1/2 inch wide, and you want to plant twice the width that the seed is. That's how deep you want to plant it. And these again are bush beans. They're not pole beans, so they're only going to grow to a certain size, and then they'll be able to harvest all at once, which will be good because that should work out well. By the time I get a harvest from this, I'll be able to take them out before the heat comes in. That's at least my goal. And then I'll have my other beans that I plant in my main garden, which are going to be pole beans. And then I'll have a late planting of beans that I plant in my green stalk. That's not a good bean. Last year I planted jade beans in my green stalk, and they did amazing. So I'm definitely doing that this year. I've never tried provider beans. I've heard really good things about them. That's the wind blowing the greenhouse door shut. But I've never grown them before, so this will be new. Oh, that worked out just about perfect. I have 2 bean seeds left, so let's make sure we have one over here on the end. And then we're good. Now let's cover them up. I didn't get them deep enough. I can just push them in with my finger. All right, and the final step will be to water. In case you're wondering, this planter came from Good Ideas. It was lightweight, super easy to assemble. I'm absolutely loving it. It's actually supposed to be a self-watering planter where you water down at that little hole in the corner, but I haven't used it like that yet. I've just mainly watered from the top. But if you're interested in an easy to assemble planter that's lightweight, and so far it's worked great, we'll put a link in the show notes for that. Now, some of these seeds are popping up because I didn't get them deep enough. So I want to make sure I have them covered. This is definitely not required, but I'm going to go ahead and add just a layer of compost. This bed is pretty much of new soil, so I don't really need to, but it never hurts to add a little bit of compost. Especially in the areas back here that I can tell are getting a little bit lower level. Truly, succession planting and relay planting are my favorite methods to use to get more food out of the same amount of garden space. It's a huge way for you to take advantage of the space that you already have. So if you're interested in more about succession planting and relay planting and different ideas that you could use in your own garden, check out the podcast episode where I talk way more about succession and relay planting here. And be sure to subscribe for future how-to videos on the channel. I hope you've enjoyed.